I swear, the universe has a twisted sense of humor. See, when my wife, Ashley, asked me to meet her for a serious talk over dinner, I actually thought maybe, just maybe, she was ready to work on us. I even put on the good shirt, the one I usually reserve for weddings and job interviews. Instead, I walked into a setup, a Camelot ambush. There he was already at the table, Chase Donovan, her colleague. I knew the name because she dropped it into conversations like a dog dropping toys at your feet, desperate for attention. Chase was the kind of guy who wore tight black shirts like they were birthrights. He had that protein powder ad smile, the smug kind that begged for someone to wipe it off his face. Ashley sat next to him, her hand just a little too close to his thigh, laughing too hard at his dumb joke. When she saw me, she lit up with that fake sweetness she keeps in her purse next to the lip gloss. "Logan," she said, motioning me to sit. "This is Chase. You've heard me mention him." Oh, I'd heard. Too often. I sat, forced to smile, and clenched my fists under the table. I thought maybe they were about to tell me something awkward, like she was leaving. But no, Chase leaned in first. His eyes locked on mine with this slow-burn arrogance, and he said, calm as can be, "You've got two options, Logan. Leave quietly, or face me like a man." Ashley didn't flinch. She smiled. My ears rang. The whole room blurred except for his smirk and her silence. I repeated his words in my head like subtitles. Leave quietly, or face me like a man. He thought I'd crawl, that I'd just walk away from my house, my life, my marriage, hand it all over like a set of car keys. Instead, I took a slow breath, smiled back, and said, "You want your teeth whole or in pieces?" That was the last civil sentence spoken at that table. The restaurant emptied me out like a bad storm. Plates shattered, security dragged me away. Ashley shrieked about being embarrassed, while her boy toy dabbed at his face with a napkin like a wounded actor. And me? I stood in the cold night air, hands raw from glass and fists, realizing one ugly truth. She hadn't brought me there to save us. She brought me there to watch me lose. That was her final act. Curtain closed. When I got home, the house felt like a stage set after the audience leaves. Quiet, fake, still smelling of perfume that wasn't mine to breathe in anymore. Something was off. The bed was too neat, hotel neat, corners tucked in like military drills. Ashley never made the bed like that. So I looked. Not because I was suspicious. I already knew. I looked because I wanted the truth in my hands. Something solid. The closet? A pair of red heels I'd never seen. Expensive. She hadn't worn heels in months. Not for me anyway. The vanity? Her tablet. She never locked it. She thought I was too trusting or too dumb. She was wrong. The first photo almost caved my chest in. Her, barely dressed, mirror selfie in a hotel I didn't recognize. Time-stamped last weekend. The weekend she told me she was at a baby shower in Sacramento. Another swipe. There he was, Chase, shirtless, brushing his teeth in the background. My breathing went shallow. There were more. Videos. Messages. His voice notes calling her my little secret. Her giggling like a teenager. And then the one that burned itself into my skull. He still thinks we're just in a rough patch. Poor baby. Poor baby. That's what she called me. Not husband. Not partner. Poor baby. The next morning, she walked in like nothing had happened. Coffee cup in hand, hair tied up, scrolling her phone like a bored teenager. I sat at the dining table, tablet open on the messages, eyes locked on her. She looked up. What? I didn't say a word. Just slid the tablet across the table. Her fingers froze mid-scroll. She stared at the screen, slowly looked up at me. Her first words? Not "I'm sorry." Not even denial. No. She tilted her head, sneered, and asked, "Why were you snooping through my stuff?" That's when I knew. She wasn't just cheating. She was a liar so deep in her own swamp that guilt couldn't even find her anymore. I leaned forward, calm as a stone. You lied to me. You gaslit me for months. You humiliated me in public. And now, I let the silence hang long enough for her to squirm. Now I'm done being your placeholder. Ashley thought she had me cornered. To her, I was the gullible husband who'd just caught up to the obvious, while she was already 10 steps ahead with Chase flexing in the background. What she didn't know is that I'd been playing slow and steady for months, quietly building a folder I called insurance. See, I'm not a man who screams. I don't throw plates. I don't beg for explanations. I collect dates, receipts, screenshots, like a museum of betrayal. And my museum was getting pretty crowded. After she stormed off that morning, muttering something about me being pathetic, I opened the nightstand drawer. Beneath the old birthday cards and half-dead chargers was a manila folder. Thick, organized, deadly. Inside, screenshots of texts she thought she deleted. Hotel receipts charged to a joint account she assumed I never checked. Bank transfers to a wellness coach who didn't exist. Spoiler, it was Chase. Even a few DMs where she bragged to her friends about how free she finally felt. Free, huh? Amazing how free feels when someone else is paying the mortgage. That evening, she came waltzing in late, smelling like vanilla and guilt. Tossed her purse on the counter like nothing happened. "Don't wait up," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Chase and I have a project tonight." I didn't even look up from the folder. "Oh, I know." She froze for half a second, then laughed. That fake, nasal laugh she uses when she's nervous. "What's that supposed to mean?" I held up the hotel receipt. "Funny, this project required champagne at the Hilton?" Her face drained, then hardened. "You're pathetic. Spying on me. Collecting scraps like some jealous child." I smiled. "Not spying. Preparing." That word rattled her. I could see it in her eyes. She didn't understand, but she knew enough to be afraid. The rest of the night, she clanged around the kitchen, muttering to herself, pretending not to care. But every few minutes, I caught her glance at the folder. Like a cat watching a door it knows will open eventually. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a fight. I just went to bed early. Calm. Patient. Because if she thought that was my revenge, she had no idea what was coming. She must have thought silence meant surrender. That's the problem with people like Ashley. They mistake calm for weakness and patience for fear. The truth is, I don't yell because I don't need to. The storm already belongs to me before the first drop of rain falls. The morning after the Hilton receipt reveal, I brewed coffee the way I always do. French press, for minutes steep, a little cream in mine, almond milk in hers. She floated downstairs in her robe, pretending yesterday hadn't happened. "You're sweet," she said, lifting the mug to her lips. I smiled. "See? Still serving you." She gave me a look, suspicious but not sharp enough to cut through the act. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, face lighting like a kid sneaking candy. A giggle slipped out before she caught herself. That laugh. I used to love it. Now it was just the soundtrack of a bad joke with me as the punchline. "Work stuff," she muttered, thumb flying across the screen. "Of course," I said. "Always working." She didn't notice the second phone on the counter. Mine. Already synced with hers, thanks to an old family iCloud setup she forgot about. Every text she sent, every late-night emoji she thought was clever, every whispered "baby" to her toy boy, all of it pinged to me in real time. By 8:30 a.m., I knew Chase was planning a business trip with her next weekend. By 9:15, I had screenshots. By lunch, I had already sent them, anonymously, to Chase's boss with a polite little subject line: "Conduct unbecoming of a project manager." Corporate men like Chase think their charm is bulletproof. But companies don't like scandals, especially ones involving hotel receipts and married coworkers. That evening, Ashley came home flushed and buzzing like she'd just won the lottery. "Guess what?" she said, tossing her bag down. "Chase wants me to join him in Miami next week." Big opportunity. I didn't even blink. "Miami, huh? You've always hated the humidity." She rolled her eyes. "Don't start, Logan. This could be good for me. For us. For us." That's what she said, standing there in my kitchen, holding her phone like it was oxygen. The same phone that had just leaked her entire affair to the man who signed Chase's paychecks. I just nodded. "I'm happy for you." She squinted, like she was trying to see through the calm. "But the thing about masks? Some of us wear them better." The next day at work, I got the first call. My buddy Mike, who knew a guy in HR at Chase's firm. He said Chase had been reassigned, pending an internal review. Miami was suddenly off the table. That night, Ashley stomped into the house like a thundercloud. "Can you believe this?" she snapped, pacing the kitchen. "They canceled the whole thing. Said something about budget cuts. It's ridiculous." I stirred my coffee slowly. "Shame. I know how much you were looking forward to sweating it out in Florida." Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny?" I set my mug down and leaned back in my chair. "I think life has a way of correcting itself. Don't you?" She stormed off, muttering about how I never supported her. That was her favorite line lately. As if support meant clapping politely while she dismantled our life piece by piece. Here's the thing about strategy. You never reveal the full plan at once. You give them rope. Just enough to keep walking. Just enough to think they're free. Over the next week, I tightened the screws one notch at a time. Subtle moves. I forwarded Chase's shirtless hotel selfies, blurred just enough to look anonymous, to Ashley's book club group chat. Wrong number, I wrote. They didn't need names. Women know wallpaper patterns. Within hours, the whispers started. I accidentally left her tablet open on the kitchen counter with the messages pulled up. Not where she could see them, but where Noah, our teenage son, could. He didn't say a word, but the way he looked at her at dinner, the silence thicker than gravy, was enough. Kids don't need details to understand betrayal. I called our bank and put a hold on the joint account, pending suspicious activity. When she went to swipe her card at the boutique 2 days later and it declined, the tantrum was Olympic level. "This is humiliating," she screamed. I shrugged. Maybe use Chase's card. By the end of that week, Ashley was cracking. Her voice got sharper. Her nights later, her excuses sloppier. One night she even slipped and called me Chase. She tried to laugh it off. I just smiled. Easy mistake. But the piece de resistance came on Saturday. We were at a barbecue with some neighbors. Her chance to show off, gossip, play queen of the cul-de-sac. She wore that smug grin, wine in hand, laughing too loud. Then Greg, the neighbor with no filter, grinned at her and said, "Hey Ashley, how's Hilton these days? Good champagne." The way her face fell could have powered the whole block. She looked at me, eyes wide, searching for rescue. I just sipped my beer and said, "Yeah, honey. How was Hilton?" The table went silent. Someone coughed. She excused herself, muttering something about needing the bathroom. I stayed put, smiling, calm. The storm already belonged to me. That night, she cornered me in the bedroom. "You're behind this, aren't you?" Her voice was trembling now, sharp but shaky. "The account, the messages, the barbecue. This is you." I tilted my head. "Behind what? You mean behind the choices you made?" "You're ruining my life," she spat. "No, Ashley," I said quietly, leaning in close enough for her to smell the calm on me. "I'm just holding up a mirror. You're the one ruining your life. I'm just making sure you get front row seats." For the first time in months, she had no comeback. Just silence. I lay down, pulled the blanket over me, and closed my eyes. Because here's the real kicker. She still thought she could claw her way out. She thought this was the worst it could get. But she hadn't seen the trap close yet. She hadn't seen the last card. And when she did, it would be too late. It's funny how betrayal doesn't collapse a house in one loud crash. It's quieter than that. It's termites in the beams, mold behind the drywall. By the time you see the rot, the damage is already done. Ashley still didn't realize the termites weren't just eating through us. They were already eating through her. I'd let her stew for a week after the barbecue disaster. She stomped around the house like an actress rehearsing for a role she'd already lost, slamming cabinets, sighing dramatically, starting half-hearted arguments. I didn't bite. I'd answer calmly, maybe with a smile that said, "You're not half as clever as you think." That smile got under her skin worse than shouting ever could. One Thursday night, she sat at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, swirling it like she was in some soap opera. "I don't get it," she muttered. "You act like you don't even care anymore. Do you still love me or not?" I looked up from my laptop. I don't confuse love with stupidity. Her jaw dropped, like she couldn't believe I'd actually said it. She wanted a fight, but I wasn't giving her the oxygen. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and watched her squirm. That silence, me not leaping to defend, not chasing, was worse for her than any insult. What she didn't know was that I'd been working on something far bigger than silent treatment. See, Ashley liked to think she was the social butterfly of our suburb. Wine nights, book clubs, spin class gossip. All of it was her little stage. What she didn't realize is how thin that stage was. And I'd already started sawing at the supports. First step, exposure. Quiet, surgical exposure. Not the screaming, "Look what she did." Kind, that's messy. No, I preferred the kind where everyone finds out on their own. The kind where her reputation collapses in whispers before she even knows the story's out. So one Friday afternoon, while she was meeting Chase for coffee, code for whatever they were actually doing, I paid a visit to my friend Marcus. He ran the print shop in town, the kind of place that still does flyers, newsletters, church bulletins. Marcus owed me a favor or two, and he didn't ask questions. I handed him a USB stick labeled birthday photos and a crisp $100 bill. Print 50 copies, I said. Bundle them neat. Inside that stick? Screenshots. Blurry, yes, but damning. Hotel receipts with Ashley's name. Text messages that read more like soap opera dialogue than professional correspondence. A couple of selfies, her hand on Chase's chest, time-stamped the same weekend she told me she was at a real estate seminar. By Saturday morning, those copies had found their way into the right mailboxes: the pastor's wife, the HOA president, the PDA board, even her spin class instructor. I didn't sign them, of course, just left them anonymous, folded into plain envelopes. People don't need signatures to believe scandal. That night, Ashley walked into the house with a tight smile plastered on her face. "So weird," she said, pouring another glass of wine. "Everyone was acting different today." "Different how?" I asked, not looking up from my book. She frowned. "Distant. Like whispering behind my back. Even Sandra, she always saves me a bike in class. Today she didn't even look at me." I flipped a page. Maybe people are just busy." She glared at me like she knew I was enjoying this too much. "You think this is funny, don't you?" I closed the book. "No. I think it's predictable." Her face twisted, but she didn't answer. She stomped upstairs, muttering something about me being cold. Cold. If only she knew. The beauty of reputation is that once it cracks, it never seals again. Every smirk, every whisper, every text sent in the wrong tone. Suddenly it all feels like proof. And Ashley, queen of her little circle, was learning what exile feels like. But I wasn't done. Step 2. Finances. While she was busy trying to salvage her social standing, I was busy at the bank. Remember that manila folder? It wasn't just hotel receipts. It had a neat little record of every financial move she'd made in the last year. Credit cards, hidden Venmo transfers, even that little rainy day account she thought I didn't know about. Spoiler, I did. I'd already sat down with my lawyer. We went through the numbers like surgeons prepping for an operation. By the time I left his office, the plan was airtight. She'd walk away with nothing but whatever Chase could buy her. That Sunday, she finally broke. She cornered me in the living room, eyes glassy with wine and fear. "You can't do this," she said. "You can't just throw away 20 years like they're nothing." I looked at her evenly. "You threw them away, Ashley. I'm just taking out the trash." Her face went red. "You think you're so clever. But you're not perfect either. People will see that." I almost laughed. "Maybe. But here's the difference. I don't pretend. You do. And everyone's finally starting to see it." She stormed upstairs, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames. I sat back, calm, sipping my coffee. Here's the part she still didn't get. I wasn't rushing this. I wasn't going for the knockout punch right away. Revenge isn't about rage. It's about patience. It's about watching someone unravel with every step they take, never realizing you're the one pulling the thread. And she was unraveling beautifully. That week, she skipped her spin class, canceled book club, even dodged wine night with the neighbors. She stayed home more, scrolling through her phone like it might save her, chain smoking on the porch when she thought I wasn't watching. Meanwhile, I kept steady. Work, gym, yard work on Saturdays. Normal. Calm. That calm scared her more than yelling ever could. But the real surprise was Chase. See, while Ashley was flailing, Chase was crumbling. The corporate investigation I'd nudged along had teeth. He was suspended, then quietly let go. Restructuring, they called it. But I knew the truth. And so did he. 2 weeks later, Ashley came home pale, eyes wide. "He's gone," she whispered. I raised an eyebrow. "Gone? Chase. They fired him. He's moving out of state." Her voice cracked. "He didn't even say goodbye. Just a text. Sorry. Can't do this." I set my coffee down. "Well, guess Miami really was too humid." She stared at me, finally connecting dots. You did this." I smiled, slow and calm. "Ashley, I didn't do anything. Life just corrected itself." For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked small, fragile, like someone who'd bet everything on a card that wasn't even in the deck. But she still had no idea the real trap was waiting. Because revenge isn't revenge until it's final. Until it takes the one thing they cling to last. And Ashley? She was about to find out what that was. There's a moment every gambler faces when the chips are gone, the cards are bad, and the table gets very, very quiet. That's where Ashley found herself after Chase bolted. No more secret hotel meetups. No more selfies in rented rooms. No more texting with emojis like a teenager. Just her, me, and the silence she hated most. Funny thing about silence, it tells the truth louder than shouting ever could. She tried to patch things up at first, in her own way. One night she cooked dinner, which was suspicious enough on its own. She set the table with candles, poured me wine, leaned across with that old smile she used to wear when she wanted something. "Logan," she said softly, "I know I've made mistakes, but we've built a life together. Doesn't that matter?" I sipped the wine. It mattered when it was real. Her lips tightened. "So you're just going to throw everything away?" I looked her dead in the eye. "No, Ashley. You did that. I'm just collecting the receipts." The fork slipped out of her hand and clattered against the plate. She stared at me like she was finally realizing this wasn't a standoff. This was a countdown. See, when people cheat, they cling to one last safety net: control. They still think they can spin the story, twist the narrative, play the victim. Ashley's last card wasn't love, it wasn't chase, it was reputation. She thought if she could convince the right people, she'd still land on her feet. That's the net I decided to cut. It started small. A quiet meeting with my lawyer on a Wednesday afternoon. We went over every joint account, every line of credit, every asset. By the time I walked out, the gears were turning. Ashley didn't know it yet, but the house, the cars, even her boutique credit card, all of it was slipping out from under her manicured fingers. That Friday, I casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, the joint account's closed." Her head snapped around. "What?" "Bank flagged some suspicious activity," I said, keeping my tone light. "Safer this way." She laughed nervously. "Suspicious activity? What are you even talking about?" I shrugged. "Hotel receipts. Transfers to your wellness coach. That sort of thing." Her face went pale. "You can't just." "I already did." I stood, rinsed my mug, left the room. Calm. Controlled. She shouted something after me, but it bounced off the walls like static. The next week was chaos for her. Declined cards, calls from creditors, whispers at yoga class. She accused me of sabotaging her. I didn't deny it. I just smiled and said, "You told me once I was boring. Guess I'm finally interesting." But I wasn't just stripping her finances. I was unraveling her image. At the next HOA meeting, I sat quietly until the floor opened for new business. Then I raised my hand. "I'd like to remind everyone to be cautious with joint accounts and personal spending. Betrayal doesn't just come from strangers." A few people nodded awkwardly. Some glanced at Ashley, who sat stiff as stone. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. By the time dessert was served, the story had already walked itself around the room. The next day, Ashley stormed into the living room, face flushed with rage. "You're trying to destroy me." I looked up from the paper. "No, I'm letting you destroy yourself. Big difference." She glared at me for a long time, but the thing about glare-offs is simple. The one who blinks first loses. She blinked. Meanwhile, Noah, our son, wasn't blind to any of this. He'd stopped asking his mom to help with homework, stopped talking to her at dinner. One night, after she stomped off upstairs, he looked at me and said quietly, "She doesn't even feel like mom anymore." That hit harder than I let him see. But I nodded. People show who they really are eventually. Better we know now. He didn't answer, just kept eating. But I saw the way his shoulders relaxed, like he finally trusted me to handle it. Ashley, meanwhile, tried one last play. She called her sister, Rachel, the eternal gossip. I overheard the conversation while Ashley paced the patio. "He's crazy, Rachel. He's freezing me out, turning people against me. I think he's planning something big. You have to back me up." I could almost hear Rachel's silence through the glass door. Finally, Ashley snapped, "Don't you dare believe those stupid rumors. Chase and I were just friends." It was harmless. Harmless. That word. The same word she used when I confronted her about late-night texts months ago. Harmless. When she hung up, she caught me watching through the glass. "What?" she snapped. I smiled. "Nothing. Just enjoying the show." The real show was still coming, because I hadn't played my final card yet. See, months before all this, when I first suspected, I'd started keeping backups. Emails, texts, bank statements, every ugly little breadcrumb she left behind. Not just in a folder, not just in the cloud, but in a neat little package labeled Ashley's Greatest Hits. That package was now sitting on the desk of my lawyer, on a flash drive in my safe, and in the inbox of one person Ashley trusted most, her boss. I didn't hit send yet. Patience. Timing matters. One night, she sat across from me, eyes red, voice low. Logan, please. Can't we just start over? I leaned forward, calm. Ashley, you don't start over when you burn the foundation. You build somewhere else. And trust me, you're going to have plenty of time to do that. She didn't understand what I meant. Not yet. The next morning, I filed the papers. Divorce, full documentation attached. Grounds, infidelity. Evidence, overwhelming. Custody, leaning heavily in my favor. When the papers were served, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at me, mouth open, like she'd finally realized the stage lights were off, the audience gone. You planned this, she whispered. I met her eyes. Of course I did. Because here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you all the time in the world to build the ending. And hers was only just beginning. When the divorce papers hit the table, Ashley thought that was the end of my game. That was the first mistake. She paced the kitchen like a caged cat, muttering about her lawyer, about half of everything, about how the court would see what kind of man I really was. I let her rant, let her think she still had a foothold. What she didn't know was that I'd already seen her lawyer's letterhead weeks before. It was the same guy who tried to get Chase's job back. Desperate men hire desperate lawyers. Meanwhile, my attorney and I had been busy. Custody lined up, finances locked down, assets shifted. All legal, all airtight. Ashley's friends stopped answering her texts. The book club quietly replaced her. The PDA misplaced her invite to the spring fundraiser. Everywhere she turned, a door shut. And every time she stomped back into the house, red-faced and panicked, I'd greet her with a calm. Tough day. That calm infuriated her more than any shouting match ever could. Here's where the rope tightened. See, Ashley had one last card she thought she could play, Noah. She figured if she could spin him against me, she'd win leverage. Classic move, use the kid as a pawn. But she forgot one thing. Noah wasn't blind. He'd seen the late nights, the cold mornings, the empty excuses. He knew. One night, she sat him down in the living room. I listened from the hallway. Noah, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. You know your dad is trying to hurt me, right? He's being mean, shutting me out. But I love you. I'll always be here for you. Noah didn't hesitate. He looked her straight in the eye and said, Then why were you with Chase when you told us you were at work? The silence after that hit harder than any gavel. Ashley stammered, tried to spin, but the boy had already walked upstairs. I stepped into the room, leaned against the doorframe. Checkmate, I said quietly. She glared at me, but the fear was starting to show. The court date arrived. Ashley came in dressed like she was auditioning for sympathy. Pale blouse, pearls, tears cued on command. She tried her performance on the judge, painting me as cold, distant, controlling. Then my lawyer stood, calm as Sunday service. He slid a folder across the table. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence. Screenshots, receipts, photos, the whole sordid trail. Even a text from Chase bragging about their Miami plans. The judge skimmed through it all, frowning deeper with each page. Ashley tried to object, tried to cry, tried to turn it on me. But you can't argue with your own handwriting, your own hotel receipts, your own face smiling in someone else's selfie. By the end of the session, custody leaned my way, the house was secure, and Ashley's half of everything shrank to almost nothing. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. When the gavel dropped, I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just nodded once, like a man who'd already seen the end of the play before the curtain rose. You probably think that's the end. Court win, custody, finances secure. Clean break, right? But remember, I promised you a cruel ending. Unexpected. After the dust settled, Ashley tried to save face on social media. Photos of wine glasses, captions about new beginnings, hashtags about self-love. It was pathetic, but I let her have it, because the real ending was already in motion. See, months earlier, I'd quietly bought a piece of property. Nothing fancy, just a rental house across town. And when the time came, I offered it to someone who needed it more than Ashley ever would. Who? Chase's ex-wife. Turns out, Chase had left behind more than just a job. He'd left behind her and 2 kids, struggling to keep their footing after his little adventures. She was sharp, kind, tired of being lied to. When I handed her the keys, I also handed her a flash drive. Chase's messages, photos, receipts. Proof of everything. She looked at me, stunned. Why would you give me this? I smiled. Because people like him, and like Ashley, only learn when the mirror gets turned around. The fallout was nuclear. Chase's ex filed her own motions. He lost what little reputation he had left. Ashley, already radioactive, found herself alone, broke, and socially exiled. And me? I didn't rage. I didn't celebrate. I just went home to my son, cooked us dinner, and sat at the table where Ashley once sneered that I was boring. Maybe I am boring. Maybe I don't giggle over hotel selfies or hashtags. But boring men build homes. Boring men keep promises. Boring men outlast the storm. The cruel part? Ashley will spend the rest of her life knowing I didn't just leave her. I erased the stage she thought she owned. No applause, no spotlight, just silence. And silence, my friends, is permanent.